forbidding aspect, and with one eye lower set than t'other, she had subtlety enough to induce a young man named Southerners to marry her, and two children, a son and daughter, were the fruit of the union." "The daughter I have seen at Whalley," observed Potts, "but I have never encountered the son." "Christopher Demdike still lives, I believe," replied the chirurgeon, "though what has become of him I know not, for he has quitted these parts. He is as ill reputed as his mother, and has the same strange and fearful look about the eyes." "I shall recognise him if I see him," observed Potts. "You are scarcely likely to meet him," returned Sudall, "for, as I have said, he has left the forest. But to return to my story. The married state was little suitable to Bess Demdike, and in 5 years she contrived to free herself from her husband's restraint, and ruled alone in the Tower. Her malignant influence now began to be felt throughout the whole district, and by dint of menaces and positive acts of mischief, she extorted all she required. Whosoever refused her request speedily experienced her resentment. When she was in the fulness of her power, a rival sprang up in the person of Anne Whittle, since known by the name of Chattox, which she obtained in marriage, and this woman disputed Bess Demdike's supremacy. Each strove to injure the adherents of her rival, and terrible was the mischief they wrought. In the end, however, Mother Demdike got the upper hand. Years have flown over the old hag's head, and her guilty career has been hitherto attended with impunity. Plans have been formed to bring her to justice, but they have ever failed, and so in the case of old Chattox. Her career has been as baneful and as successful as that of Mother Demdike." "But their course is well nigh run," said Potts, "and the time is come for the extirpation of the old serpents." "Who is that at the window?" cried Sudall. "But that you were sitting near me, I should declare you were looking in at us." "It must be Master Potts's brother, the reeve of the forest," observed Nicholas, with a laugh. "Heed him not," cried the attorney, angrily, "but let us have the promised legend of Malkin Tower." "Willingly," replied the chirurgeon; "but before I begin, I must recruit myself with a can of ale." The flagon being set before him, Sudall commenced his story. THE LEGEND OF MALKIN TOWER. On the brow of a high hill, forming part of the range of Pendle, and commanding an extensive view over the forest and the wild and mountainous region around it, stands a stern solitary tower, old as the Anglo Saxons, and built as a stronghold by Wulstan, a Northumbrian thane, in the time of Edmund or Edred. It is circular in form, and very lofty, and serves as a landmark to the country round. Placed high up in the building, the door was formerly reached by a steep flight of stone steps, but these were removed some 50 or 60 years ago by Mother Demdike, and a ladder, capable of being raised or let down at pleasure, substituted for them, affording the only apparent means of entrance. The tower is otherwise inaccessible, the walls being of immense thickness, with no windows lower than 25 feet from the ground, though it is thought there must be a secret outlet, for the old witch, when she wants to come forth, does not wait for the ladder to be let down. But that may be otherwise explained. Internally there are 3 floors, the lowest being placed on a level with the door, and this is the apartment chiefly occupied by the hag. In the centre of this room is a trap door, opening upon a deep vault, which forms the basement story of the structure, and which was once used as a dungeon, but is now tenanted, it is said, by a fiend, who can be summoned by the witch on stamping her foot. Round the room runs a gallery, contrived in the thickness of the wall, while the upper chambers are gained by a secret staircase, and closed by movable stones, the machinery of which is only known to the inmate of the tower. All the rooms are lighted by narrow loopholes. Thus you will see that the fortress is still capable of sustaining a siege, and old Demdike has been heard to declare that she would hold it for a month against 100 men. Hitherto it has proved impregnable. On the Norman invasion, Malkin Tower was held by Ughtred, the descendant of Wulstan, who kept possession of Pendle Forest and the hills around it, and successfully resisted the aggressions of the conquerors. His enemies affirmed he was assisted by a demon, whom he had propitiated by some fearful sacrifice made in the tower, and the notion seemed borne out by the success uniformly attending his conflicts. Ughtred's prowess was stained by cruelty and rapine, merciless in the treatment of his captives, putting them to death by horrible tortures, or immuring them in the dark and noisome dungeon of his tower. He would hold his revels over their heads, and deride their groans. Heaps of treasure obtained by pillage were secured by him in this tower. From his frequent acts of treachery, and the many foul murders he perpetrated, Ughtred was styled the scourge of the Normans. For a long period he enjoyed complete immunity from punishment, but after the siege of York and the defeat of the insurgents, his destruction was vowed by Ilbert de Lacy, Lord of Blackburnshire, and this fierce chieftain set fire to part of the forest in which the Saxon Thane and his followers were concealed, drove them to Malkin Tower, took it after an obstinate and prolonged defence, and considerable loss to himself, and put them all to the sword, except the leader, whom he hanged from the top of his own fortress. In the dungeon were found many carcases, and the greater part of Ughtred's treasure served to enrich the victor. Once again, in the reign of Henry VI., Malkin Tower became a robber's stronghold, and gave protection to a freebooter named Blackburn, who, with a band of daring and desperate marauders, took advantage of the troubled state of the country, ravaged it far and wide, and committed unheard of atrocities, even levying contributions on the abbeys of Whalley and Salley, and the heads of these religious establishments were glad to make terms with him to save their herds and stores, the rather that all attempts to dislodge him from his mountain fastness and destroy his band had failed. Blackburn seemed to enjoy the same kind of protection as Ughtred, and practised the same atrocities, torturing and imprisoning his captives unless they were heavily ransomed. He also led a life of the wildest licence, and when not engaged in some predatory exploit, spent his time in carousing with his followers. Upon one occasion it chanced that he made a visit in disguise to Whalley Abbey, and passing the little hermitage near the church, beheld the votaress who tenanted it. This was Isole de Heton. Ravished by her wondrous beauty, Blackburn soon found an opportunity of making his passion known to her, and his handsome, though fierce, lineaments pleasing her, he did not long sigh in vain. He frequently visited her in the garb of a Cistercian monk, and being taken for one of the brethren, his conduct brought great scandal upon the abbey. The abandoned votaress bore him a daughter, and the infant was conveyed away by the lover, and placed under the care of a peasant's wife at Barrowford. From that child sprung Bess Blackburn, the mother of old Demdike, so that the witch is a direct descendant of Isole de Heton. Notwithstanding all precautions, Isole's dark offence became known, and she would have paid the penalty of it at the stake if she had not fled. In scaling Whalley Nab, in the woody heights of which she was to remain concealed till her lover could come to her, she fell from a rock, shattering her limbs and disfiguring her features. Some say she was lamed for life, and became as hideous as she had heretofore been lovely, but this is erroneous, for apprehensive of such a result, attended by the loss of her lover, she invoked the powers of darkness, and preferred her soul in return for 5 years of unimpaired beauty. A compact was made, and when Blackburn came he found her more beautiful than ever. Enraptured, he conveyed her to Malkin Tower, and lived with her there in security, laughing to scorn the menaces of Abbot Eccles, by whom he was excommunicated. Time went on, and as Isole's charms underwent no change, her lover's ardour continued unabated. 5 years passed in guilty pleasures,